This reminds me of another story from 1973, when the Jewish community in Rome gathered and brought all the gold they had at home to sell and send the money to Israel after the Yom Kippur War. It was a tragic moment, and my dad was one of the organizers of this gold collection. And it was the same thing the Nazis did to Jews in the 1940s, where they demanded gold from the Jews. But this time, the Jews did it freely, not because someone else demanded it of them. They did it voluntarily to help their brothers and sisters in Israel and put their money where their mouth is.
Welcome to What Came After. I'm your host, Manya Marcus. On What Came After, we'll take a look at the many ways that people's lives changed on and after the brutal massacre in Israel on October 7th, 2023. We'll be speaking with people in Israel and around the world about how the devastating attack by Hamas has shifted, shaped, and changed them. To learn more about our podcast, please visit us at whatcameafter.com. Shall we begin? Okay, it is February 6th, 2025, and I am sitting here in the beautiful and delicious Casalino in the Jewish ghetto of Rome. So I want to set the scene for everybody who's listening. We are inside the restaurant. It is lunchtime. There are lots of customers here, and it is vibrant, and it is loud, and it is lively, and I am so honored to be interviewing Mino. Mino, what is your last name?
Mino Zarfati.
Basically, Tsarfati in Hebrew is similar to Tsarfatim, meaning French, referring to the people who were kicked out in 1492 during the expulsion of Jews from the Kingdom of Spain.
He's authentic. This is for real. Okay, great. So Mino, if you could just introduce yourself, introduce the restaurant, tell us where we are and where you're from.
La mia storia nasce.
I was born in 1961 right across this square. Where you see the arches, there are old ruins, next to which there used to be a church that is no longer functional. Back in the day, it was still a church with an attic apartment above it. I was born there, and I lived my entire life in this neighborhood until I was 18, when I started my involvement with the Jewish youth movement and began my adult life.
So you were raised religious or you were not raised religious?
The way I grew up, being religious, meant a sense of belonging to my tradition and community. The main aspect of my education was the idea of being attached to my origins, especially to this specific area. Not just to the Jewish people, but to the entire Jewish community of Rome that has been in this specific spot for 2,000 years. I introduced myself as Mino Tsarfati, but I'm known as Casalino because nearby there's a Teatro Marcello where I used to play with my brothers and sisters. Unfortunately, one day, my younger brother got hit by a rock in his eye and was badly injured. After this happened, my sister and I were always at home because my mom became very apprehensive and protective. So, since I was always at home, I became Casalino in a sense.
When I spoke to his daughter, Rachel, she said nothing about the injury. She just said that Mino only liked to be at home with his mother.
I didn't want to be at home. My mom wanted to keep me at home because, back then, kids would run around in the square all day without much adult supervision. We would roam freely and return home in the evening, dirty and muddy, have a bath, eat, and go to sleep. Home was just a hotel. You check in and check out.
So I'm going to bring it to a bit of a more serious place, which is, do you think that part of the reason that your mother was so protective had to do with the fact that she survived the war?
This protectiveness was also very related to food, to eating, because during the war there was not enough food. The idea of having restaurants and guaranteed places to eat became critically important. Being at home and ensuring the family would have food was on our minds a lot. You know, there's an expression in the Judaico-Romanesco, the Jewish Roman dialect, about times of food scarcity, when families couldn't bring food home. They would do 2 laps of the table without eating. You see the table, but you don't actually sit down and share a meal together. It's really something that is embedded in our mentality.
Even though this is Casalino is about Mino and Mino owns the restaurant, it strikes me that the restaurant is also really about his mother. Tell me about your mother.
My mom is still alive, 94 years old, and she still comes to the restaurant to check if the sauce is good. If it's reflective like a mirror, she gives the green light to serve it. She basically does the quality control. My mom's main priority in the house was never what grades are you getting at school or what are you going to do today. It was, what are we going to eat for lunch or dinner? And this passion for food ultimately drove me to create this restaurant. So this is really a restaurant in honor of her. What I tried to do was not to create a restaurant that resembles home, but really to bring home into the restaurant, as if you were at her house and eating something real and genuine.
Fascinating. It's amazing. But now I want to know, how did this formidable woman survive the war? She never left, right?
Mia madre e mio padre, anche se non si conoscevano.
During the war, while my mother was a child, instead of going to school, her priority was getting food. She worked with her grandmother, selling buttons and clothing accessories. My father was a heavy smoker, and they lived near each other but hadn't yet started dating. They knew each other and lived in houses facing one another. My father's smoking became relevant on October 16th, the day of the largest Nazi deportation in Rome. My father had gone out to buy cigarettes and found himself exactly where the Nazis were organizing the roundup. But he was a good runner, so he saw the soldiers and managed to escape and hide. On my mother's side of things, she had a sister. When the Nazis entered their building, my mother's sister began crying. Surprisingly, the Nazi soldier heard her, closed the door, and left, as if he hadn't found anyone. Miraculous, no? Neither her sister, mother, nor grandmother were captured. A few days later, my grandmother, my mother, and my aunt went to a nearby square. In the chaos, they managed to find friends and contacts who could hide them. This is how they survived the war, by hiding throughout Rome through their network of connections.
So she's never lived anywhere else.
Always in Rome. Not even just Rome, here. Even after the war, when many Jews moved to other areas of Rome, my mother was determined to stay in this specific neighborhood. She even accepted a much smaller house just to remain in the same square, where she continues to live today. Her attachment to this place was incredibly strong.
Mino, have you always lived in Rome?
No. Io ho fatto.
I grew up in Rome, attending Jewish schools in the ghetto, literally in the building across from where we are speaking. At 13, after my bar mitzvah, I joined B'nai Akiva, the Zionist youth movement. As part of the program, you ideally go to live in Israel in a kibbutz, and then join the army, the IDF. So that's what I did. I made Aliyah, lived on a kibbutz, and joined the IDF. And I fought in the First Lebanon War in 1982. During the Lebanon War, I had a traumatic experience. We did an exercise before entering Lebanon, and by mistake, instead of using blank ammunition, we used real bullets. My officer saved my life, but in doing so, he was wounded by the bullet meant for me. After this happened, I fell into a deep depression. I felt very mentally unstable. I started to seek out a new career path. I tried to join a university, did the psychometric tests in Israel, but I still struggled. I didn't feel like I was in the right place. So I said, okay, let's start from the beginning. I went back to Rome, and since then I've lived here, and I'm happy to be in Rome. But the war has taken a very deep toll on me.
October 7th, 2023. What can you tell us about how quickly the problems that were in Israel were going to start to come to Europe and to Rome and to the ghetto?
When I was a kid, my grandfather and other local elders would gather here, and they would play cards and drink wine. They played with money, but no one kept the money. It would all be collected for tzedakah, for charity. This mentality of helping others in a very concrete, pragmatic way was deeply ingrained in my community's culture. So after October 7th, I felt compelled to take concrete action. On November 7th, I and other volunteers from Rome traveled to Israel and stayed until April, organizing trips to help in Kfar Aza and other kibbutzim, helping in the fields, planting seeds, and growing produce. We weren't directly helping the war effort, but we were helping out with something that the people of the area had worked so hard for in the previous months. This idea of helping each other in a pragmatic way is very dear to my heart.
Do you feel like this is a general response to tragedy? Like there's a tragedy, and then what can we do? Like what can we actually do? Is that typical?
Certo. Questo diciamo che
Yes, it's a very typical response to create something pragmatic and tangible, not just speaking, but turning ideas into actions. This approach is consistent throughout Roman Jewish history. This reminds me of another story from 1973, when the Jewish community in Rome gathered and brought all the gold they had at home to sell and send the money to Israel after the Yom Kippur War. It was a tragic moment, and my dad was one of the organizers of this gold collection. And it was the same thing the Nazis did to Jews in the 1940s, where they demanded gold from the Jews. But this time, the Jews did it freely, not because someone else demanded it of them. They did it voluntarily to help their brothers and sisters in Israel and put their money where their mouth is.
I think that all of us can agree that the world has changed since October 7th. The Roman ghetto, the Jewish ghetto, has changed as well.
I
felt a significant shift, especially in how non-Jews perceived the ghetto. Before, many people visited, not just for the food, but also for the museum, the monuments, and the Roman ruins. The area was vibrant because Roman Jews were seen as part of Roman life. After October 7th, due to anti-Semitic distortion, this public perception changed. Jews became associated with Israel, and in the visitors' minds, Israel wants to kill all the Arabs. So coming to the restaurant meant being associated with Israel, and therefore with terrible massacres of Arabs. Now, there are fewer tourists, less people, and the area is less vibrant, with less curiosity about Jewish culture.
So it started with your mother, then it's to you. I think you have 4 daughters. I think 2 of them now work with the restaurant. One of them, Noah, has been vocal about how business has come down as a result of the war. I want to say now that Casalino is not Mino's only restaurant. There's also Dolce Kosher. And we were told that Dolce Kosher is not in the Jewish ghetto. So it has had a different experience. So a few questions here. One of the things that we've seen as we've walked around the ghetto is that there are soldiers and there are guns. Is that new since October 7th? And then the second question is, how is this experience different than what is happening in Dolce Kosher, and where is Dolce Kosher?
Sì, allora, per rispondere alla domanda,
the atmosphere in the ghetto changed after October 7th. There's a higher police presence now. Before, people could move in and out freely, and it was a river of people and tourists coming. But now there's a heaviness due to the increased security. It has deterred people from visiting and asking questions. Jewish communities usually have a cultural response to these issues, but now there are fewer people coming to ask questions in the first place. The issue is that before this generation, Jews were self-defining who they are. People would come to the ghetto and they would explain. Now, people are not coming, and they are defining who we are. I opened Dolce Kosher outside the ghetto intentionally to showcase Jewish culture to non-Jews and share traditions, food, and ways of life. People often know about Jews only through the Holocaust or Israel, but I wanted to show the cultural aspect of Judaism. So I chose an area with close to no Jews, and the Jews that were there were not so attached to the community, specifically so that I could broaden this knowledge about the Jewish people. My mom used to cook for my father, and after my father passed away in 2007, we made a business out of it because she was unemployed. So that's why we opened it.
Have they seen a decline in business there?
Yes, there's been a decrease in customers due to perceptions of the bakery being associated with Israel, and that if you go there, you are endorsing Israel. In particular, there was a big group of people who would come every Sunday morning, and when the war started, they stopped going.
And these are non-Jewish people who would come on Sundays?
Non-Jews, yeah. Still, today, the majority of customers are non-Jews, because our target market is non-Jews. The anti-Semitism has been very tough, but it has never reached a level that made me feel compelled to leave. I didn't feel physically unsafe.
So I want to say that I think in North American Jewish communities, when I've said that I'm doing this part of the podcast in Europe, there has sometimes been a sense of why there's no future of Judaism in Europe. And I think I'd like Mino to talk to the people who say that.
C'è una sola risposta.
To me, the answer is that there is a relationship with the Torah, not just in a hyper-religious sense, but more on the level of identity. Attachment to Jewish identity and tradition means that there will always be Jews in Europe, because there will always be some people who are so attached to their identity that they will never completely assimilate. Some people will make Aliyah. But even those who stay in Europe have such a tight relationship with Israel that they have Israel inside themselves, even if they don't live there. The goal here is quality, not quantity. So even if there are less people, at least we are very attached, very active, very close to the community, and very close to Israel. We know that the numbers probably will go down, but there will always be a Jewish community in Europe, thanks to this very strong connection.
Look, I come from a modern Orthodox synagogue. 2 months after October 7th, I said, I want to go. Nobody said to me, are you safe? Are you okay? They said, go, of course. But now it is, February 2025? They're saying I wouldn't go to Europe. So I'm trying to think about the connection we have to Torah and to tradition and also to each other as a reason for being here at a time when it seems very uncomfortable to be here.
I invite you all to come so I can convince you that it's cool and safe and nice here.
I want to thank you for being with me in this beautiful place and spending time. I think you're a busy man. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to What Came After wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us online at whatcameafter.com.
Attimo che va bene, che ne sbello, violino mio, nello bum bum, e sciù.